Today we're going to be talking about Discourses and Selected Writings by Epictetus. I picked this book randomly off the shelf out of curiosity, having heard a bit about Stoicism, and I'm very glad I did. This book actually really helped me with a little bit of anxiety I had, helped me see situations from a different perspective, and brought me a lot of inner peace. Though I read it a few months ago, I've been meditating on its principles and trying to come back to them to apply in my daily life. It contains so many gems and pieces of wisdom that I can't possibly share all of them in one video, but I chose 4 themes to go over for those who want a condensed lesson in Epictetus. First, some quick background info. Epictetus was born a slave in 55 AD in the ancient Greek city of Hierapolis. He was taken to Rome to serve as a slave for a man named Epictetus. His master was a former slave to Emperor Nero, but was now one of his secretaries. You would think being a former slave himself, Epictetus would have been a more benevolent master. However, that was not the case. In fact, Epictetus was very abusive towards Epictetus, which caused him to be partially disabled later in life. However, he did let Epictetus study under a Stoic philosopher named Musonius Rufus during his time as a slave, which laid many of the foundations of his future teachings and belief on philosophy. Eventually, Epictetus was freed, and he began teaching in Rome, which he did for 25 years, until all the philosophers in the city were banned under Emperor Domitian in 89 AD. He then moved to Greece, where he founded a school of philosophy in Nicopolis. It was here that one of his star pupils, Flavius Arrian, compiled many of Epictetus's lectures and conversations, and published them all in one place, to what we have come to know as Discourses. One of the first and most important ideas Epictetus teaches us is the concept of testing impressions. Therefore, the first and most important duty of the philosopher is to test impressions, choosing between them and only deploying those that have passed the test. It might be the most widely used pair of words in the book. So what are impressions, and what does it mean to test them? An impression is one's thoughts or judgments about something. It enters the mind at any given moment, whether true or false, and pervades our thinking. It may or may not represent the actual truth of the situation, thus the term impression. It's just an opinion. To test an impression is the process of taking a thought or opinion that comes to mind and deciding if it is true or not, and whether you should allow it to reside any longer inside your mind. Hundreds, if not thousands, of thoughts come into our mind every day. If we allow the wrong thoughts or judgments to sit and take root in our mind, it's easy to see how it could take a dark turn for our mental health, or cause us to do something without clear judgment. So the essence of the philosopher is to be able to discern between the myriad of impressions that come into our mind every single day, sort among them, and then apply the correct, truthful impression to the situation. It's like putting a filter over your mind so as not to blindly let every single thought or opinion that floats into it have permanent residence there. Epictetus uses the example of the Iliad, the ancient poem about the Trojan prince Paris who fell in love with King Menelaus' wife, Helen, and took her back to his land. This sparked the famous war over the face that launched 1,000 ships. Epictetus explains how the whole debacle all came down to how these men handled their impressions. You take the Iliad. It's nothing but people's impressions and how they dealt with them. An impression made Paris rob Menelaus of his wife. An impression got Helen to run away with him. Now, if an impression had come to Menelaus that perhaps he was better off losing such a wife, well, that would have meant the loss to us not just of the Iliad, but of the Odyssey as well. Another example he uses is the way people would scrutinize money to determine if it was real or not. The thoroughness and time that they would put in to see if these coins were true or false should be the same way humans test their own thoughts to determine if they are valid or false as well. You know how, with money, an area we believe our interests to be much at stake, we've developed the art of assaying, and considerable ingenuity has gone into developing a way to test if coins are counterfeit, involving our senses of sight, smell, hearing, and touch. The assayer will let the denarius drop and listen intently to its ring, and he is not satisfied to listen just once. After repeated listening, he practically acquires a musician's subtle ear. It is a measure of the effort we are prepared to expend to guard against deception when accuracy is at a premium. When it comes to our poor mind, however, we can't be bothered. We are satisfied accepting any and all impressions, because here the loss we suffer is not obvious. Our thoughts determine everything. They determine how we see a situation and how we will act in that situation. Perhaps you know someone who has gone through much misfortune and suffering, but somehow always has a happy disposition about them. On the other hand, the same calamities or sufferings may kill another person. It is often our impressions and opinions about the events and circumstances that surround us, not the events themselves, that ultimately determine our mood, outlook, and happiness as we go through life. On the contrary, it's the only thing within our power. Wealth is not, nor is health or fame. Nothing, in a word, is within our power except using impressions correctly. By nature, this alone cannot be interfered with or impeded. Number 2. Focus only on what you can control. What philosophy has taught me, though, is to be indifferent to events beyond the will's control. Epictetus stresses the importance of focusing on the one thing we can control in life, our will, our actions, decisions, conscious movements through this universe. After the act of testing impressions, it is up to us to decide how to act, and that is our only power, how to respond to a situation. We have often said and shown that the use of impressions represents for us the essence of good and evil, and that good and evil have to do with the will alone. And if that is true, then nothing is impractical in the philosopher's advice to be confident in everything outside the will and cautious in everything under the will's control. And so you see, that's how we can be cautious and confident at the same time, and in fact, confident owing to our caution. All good and evil rests in the human will, according to Epictetus, and anything outside of that, all externals, are neither good nor bad. Since externals, being wealth, property, reputation, death, sickness, illness, exile, etc., are outside of our control. And it is our duty, he emphasizes, as philosophers and Stoics, to be indifferent about anything that is beyond the control of our own wills. Keep in mind that being born in ancient Greece was to be born into a society with little to no social mobility, so if you were born into poverty, slavery, or into a certain social class, there was little room in escaping that. So externals, or things out of one's control, would have looked somewhat different in the ancient world than in many modern-day societies, where what you were born into doesn't determine your lot for the rest of your life. But nonetheless, the principle stays applicable today, to focus on what is in your control and to be indifferent to what is not. If the weather keeps us from traveling, we sit down, fret, and keep asking, which way is the wind blowing? From the north. That's no good. When it will blow from the west? When it wants to, or rather when Aeolus wants it to. Because God put Aeolus in charge of the winds, not you. What should we do then? Make the best use of what's in our power, and treat the rest in accordance with its nature. And what is this nature? However God decides. I don't think this means to be emotionless to outside events. I think it's more about acceptance of life and its often unpredictable events. How much time do we spend worrying about, thinking about, suffering over, trying to control events we have no power over? A lot. And perhaps accepting that those things are not in our realm of control will not always eliminate the suffering of the situation, but at least mitigate it, knowing that we did all we could in the situation. It is important to understand we are just a little speck of dust in this mighty universe, and the only influence you can have on it is you, and your will. Everything else is beyond us. Epictetus gives us an example of going on a boat ride. It's something like going on an ocean voyage. What can I do? Pick the captain, the boat, the date, and the best time to sail. But then a storm hits. Well, it's no longer my business. I have done everything I could. It's someone else's problem now, namely the captain's. What are my options? I do the only thing I'm in a position to do. Drown, but fearlessly, without bawling or crying out to God, because I know that what is born must also die. He summarizes, what is a good lie? In the will. And evil? Also in the will. And things neither good nor bad? Lie in whatever is external to the will. Number 3. Virtue is the highest good. What is the highest good in life according to Epictetus? Is it success, wealth, fame, popularity, family, friends, cheeseburgers, all of the above? No, according to him, it is virtue. Personally, I say that virtue is more valuable than wealth, to the same degree that eyes are more valuable than fingernails. Across much of human history and in many societies today, wealth, power, esteem and recognition, or how much you can acquire or conquer in life, have often been seen as the ultimate marks of greatness, happiness, and the good life, that which people prize and value above all else. And while having these things are neither good nor bad, he reminds us that A, they can be taken away from us, and B, they often have little to do with our character. Wealth, property, reputation are only a few examples of how these things are fragile. A natural disaster can destroy your home and all your belongings. A stock market crash can wipe out your life savings. An untrue slander, story release, or fake piece of gossip could ruin your reputation. And where you end up in life, though industriousness and character play a part, of course, so do where you're born, the people you meet, the opportunities that are presented to you in life. So much is affected by chance, luck, and the times which you live in. It is just charming how people boast about qualities beyond their control. For instance, I am better than you because I have many estates, while you are practically starving, or I'm a consul, I'm a governor, or I have fine curly hair. One horse doesn't say to another, I'm better than you because I have lots of hay and barley, my reins are of gold, and my saddle is embroidered, but I'm better because I'm faster than you. Every animal is judged better or worse based on its particular virtue or defect. Is man the only creature lacking of virtue, that we have to take account his hair, his clothes, his ancestry? It reminds me of a particular quote from the ancient King Solomon, who was known for his great wisdom. I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all. Again, it's not wrong to pursue any of these externals, as Epictetus calls them, as long as we recognize the outcome is never fully within our jurisdiction so as not to get attached to it, and as long as we pay attention to the manner in which we go about pursuing these things, prizing one's character above all else. The trouble is, we don't exercise these virtues because we don't appreciate them. Show me one person who cares how they act, someone for whom success is less important than the manner in which it is achieved. While out walking, who gives any thought to the act of walking itself? Who pays attention to the process of planning, not just the outcome? If the plan works, of course a person is overjoyed and says, "How well we planned it! Didn't I tell you, with brains like ours it couldn't possibly fail?" But a different result leaves the person devastated, incapable of even finding words to explain what happened. Not only does Epictetus see our character as the highest prize to attain in life, but he views challenges and difficult times not as misfortune, but opportunities to develop and cultivate character. He believes that for every situation in life, we are equipped with whatever corresponding virtue is needed to face the situation. We have exactly what it takes to be able to take on the trial, and every difficulty we face is simply an opportunity to use and cultivate our virtues and work on our character. Furthermore, you have inner strengths that enable you to bear up with difficulties of every kind. You've been given fortitude, courage, and patience. Why should I worry about what happens if I am armed with the virtue of fortitude? Instead of meeting misfortune with groans and tears, I will call upon the faculty especially provided to deal with it. The true man is revealed in difficult times, so when trouble comes, think of yourself as a wrestler whom God, like a trainer, has paired with a tough young buck. For what purpose? To turn you into Olympic-class material. When we pursue virtue and cultivate our character through life's tests and trials, we will ultimately be happier, better humans. This quality is something that can never be taken away from us and is a goal for which we can always aim. But if virtue holds its promise to secure happiness and passivity and a good flow of life, then progress towards virtue must involve progress towards these other states as well. The ideas we've covered so far ultimately come together to form one of the most central themes in the book: submitting one's will to God. You don't have to be religious or spiritual to engage with this idea, but it's one of the biggest overarching themes in his teachings. Now obviously the gods that the Greeks worshipped back in 80 AD Greece were a little different than the ones we have today. However, whatever your beliefs or religion, trying to align yourself with what the higher power wants for you is a key principle throughout the book. How to discover this may be for a future video, but here are some of Epictetus' elaborations on the concept. I personally was never kept from something I wanted, nor had forced upon me something I was opposed to. How did I manage it? I submitted my will to God. He wants me to be sick? Well, then so do I. He wants me to choose something? Then I choose it. He wants me to desire something? I desire it. He wants me to get something? I want the same. Or he doesn't want me to get it? And I concur. Thus, I even assent to death and torture. No one can make me, or keep me, from acting in line with my inclination, any more than they can similarly manipulate God. He goes on. She did not know, in effect, that obtaining our desire is not done by looking outside ourselves for help, or by changing or rearranging circumstance. Don't want your husband, and nothing you want will fail to come. Don't want to stay with him at any price. Don't wish to stay in Corinth. In short, don't want anything except what God wants. And no one will stop or stay you, any more than they can stand in the way of God. When you have him as your leader, and conform your will and desire to his, what fear of failure can you have? If we can surrender our own wills to God, and want what he wants for our life, then we can move forward through life with confidence and more ease when we encounter challenges. Epictetus repeats the following line repeatedly to emphasize this principle. Lead me, Zeus, lead me, destiny, is always on his lips, as well as, if it pleases the gods, so be it. If we say this and act in accordance with it, then we know we will surely end up achieving our proper destiny. I'll leave you with one more exchange Epictetus had at one of his lectures that basically sums up most of his teachings. Remind me what you thought was good, the will and the right use of impressions. And the goal of life is what? To follow God. And do you stand by that now? I say it even now.